Welcome back to the second and final part of Emily's terrifying journey. In part 1, we uncovered dark rituals, shocking betrayals, and the chilling power of ancient curses. Now, part 2 dives even deeper into the supernatural as Emily faces the ultimate test. Can she break the curse and save her child? As the tension rises, don't miss out. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with more spine-chilling horror stories. If you love supernatural thrillers, this final chapter is one you don't want to miss. Share it with your friends, and let's see how Emily's haunting journey ends. After hanging up the phone, Emily's heart raced with unease and tension. Every word from the old man had hit her like a hammer. She had only 3 days to act, or she would lose her child forever. Sitting in the living room, Emily buried her head in her hands, overwhelmed by anxiety and fear. Her home, once her sanctuary, now felt like a place of unbearable loneliness and dread. The memory of Jessica's cold eyes and cryptic warnings sent chills down her spine. Emily knew she couldn't wait any longer. She had to take action. She picked up the phone once more and dialed the old man's number. The moment he answered, she blurted out, "What do I do? What exactly did you mean by all of this?" The old man's voice was as calm and steady as ever. "You already know. Your friend Jessica used the womb swap ritual on you. It's an ancient European dark magic that allows someone to swap their stillborn child with another woman's healthy fetus, keeping the other woman's baby while they rid themselves of their dead one." Emily's heart skipped a beat, her fingers trembling. "But can my child be swapped back?" There was a pause. Then the old man replied, "There's still time, but you must act now. You need to find the curse object she used, an item hidden in your home to suppress your child's soul. It's draining the life from your baby. After 3 days, your child will be lost forever." A wave of cold terror washed over Emily as she scanned her surroundings, her mind racing. She remembered the strange black box she had found under her bed just a few days ago, and the 2 voodoo dolls inside. Could those be the cursed objects? "I found a box with 2 dolls inside. Is that what you're talking about?" she asked urgently. "Yes, that's exactly it. You must destroy it immediately and bring it to me. I'll help you perform the ritual," the old man replied, his voice carrying a sense of urgency. Emily nodded, her fear slowly giving way to a firm resolve. There was no time to waste. She had to save her baby. She rushed to her bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled the black box from under the bed. The cold, eerie energy surrounding the box felt even stronger now. Taking a deep breath, she opened the box. The 2 dolls lay there, the male doll's swollen belly symbolizing her loss, and the female doll's empty, slit stomach symbolizing the deadly exchange. Her heart pounded in her chest as she grabbed the dolls, her hands trembling. She could feel the dark energy pressing down on her, but she knew she couldn't hesitate. Wrapping the dolls in cloth, she placed them in a bag. She had to get them to the old man as quickly as possible. As Emily made her way to the park where the old man waited, time seemed to stretch unbearably. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and disturbing images. The subway prophecy, Jessica's cold gaze, and the voodoo doll's silent curse. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined she'd be caught in such a terrifying situation. Finally, she arrived at the park. The place was deserted, but there, sitting on a bench under the shade of a tree, was the old man. It was as if he had been waiting for her all along. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting shadows over his wrinkled face, making him seem both ancient and mysterious. Emily rushed over and handed him the bag. Her breath was shaky as she spoke. "I brought the cursed objects." The old man took the bag, examined the dolls briefly, and nodded. "Good. We're not too late." He pulled out a small black cauldron and some yellowed paper talismans from a bag he had brought. He carefully placed the dolls in the cauldron, his expression somber. His hands trembled slightly as he struck a match, lighting the paper beneath the dolls. The flames slowly licked at the dolls, and as they began to burn, a strange whispering sound filled the air, as though voices from another world were speaking through the fire. "You must use your blood to break the curse. the old man said, pulling out a long silver needle and handing it to Emily. Prick your finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the talisman. Emily's hand shook, but she took the needle without hesitation, pricking her finger. A bead of blood formed, and she pressed her finger against the talisman inside the cauldron. As her blood touched it, the flames flared brightly, and the talisman began to burn away. For the next day, you must avoid contact with Jessica. Keep the talisman pressed to your belly. If you make it through until noon tomorrow, I will perform the final ritual to fully break the curse and restore your child's life, the old man instructed gravely. Emily nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She knew she couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. Her child's life depended on it. That night, back home, Emily followed the old man's instructions and placed the talisman over her belly. She stayed alert through the night, unable to sleep, as every shadow seemed to hold a lurking threat. In the middle of the night, the nightmares came again. In her dream, the bloodied baby crawled out from under her bed, crying in agony. She felt its cold, tiny hand wrap around her finger as it whispered, "Mommy?" Emily jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. The talisman was still secure on her belly. She exhaled a shaky breath, clutching her blanket tightly. "One more day," she whispered, trying to calm herself. But she knew the hardest part was yet to come. The ticking of the clock seemed deafening in the silence of the night. Emily's heartbeat was loud in her ears, every breath tight with fear. As Emily's footsteps echoed in the cold, empty hallway, the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally across the walls. The darkness felt alive, like it was watching her, creeping closer with each step. Every rustle of wind outside made her heart race, and even the gentle creaking of the house felt like something lurking just out of sight. When she finally flicked on the light in the living room, the relief was only momentary. The air was thick and oppressive, as though she was breathing in something darker than oxygen. She could feel it, a presence, unseen but very real, watching her from the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Emily shivered as she turned back toward her bedroom, her breath catching in her throat as the door creaked open. Emily knew tonight would be the most dangerous. This was what the old man had warned her about. The power of the dark magic would be at its peak, and she would be vulnerable. She needed to survive until noon the next day, when the final ritual could be completed. She couldn't let her guard down for even a moment. She couldn't close her eyes. The wind rustled through the leaves outside, and the occasional flash of car lights illuminated the room, casting fleeting shadows on the walls that looked like ghostly figures. Her hand rested on her belly, the cold talisman beneath her fingertips offering the smallest bit of comfort. But that comfort didn't last long. Suddenly, she heard a faint noise from the living room. Emily's entire body tensed. She held her breath, her heart racing. It wasn't her imagination. Someone or something was there. Clutching a can of pepper spray, she slowly slid out of bed and crept toward the living room. The room was pitch black, but she could feel the air grow colder, heavier. It was as if something was watching her, waiting in the darkness. Flicking on the light, the room appeared empty. Emily let out a shaky breath, telling herself she was just too anxious. But just as she turned to go back to the bedroom, she heard it. The slow creak of her bedroom door opening behind her. Her heart leaped into her throat as she turned around, eyes wide. There, standing in the doorway, was John. Half of his face was hidden in shadow, and a sinister smile curled on his lips. In his hand, he held the talisman that had been on Emily's belly. It was crumpled and lifeless, as if it had lost all its power. "Looking for this, Emily?" His voice was low, dripping with mockery. Emily's mind spun in shock. How had he gotten in? Why did he have the talisman? She instinctively wrapped her arms around her belly and took a step back, dread creeping up her spine. "John, why do you have that?" Emily's voice trembled, her disbelief clear. John stepped closer, the smile fading from his face, replaced by something darker, something cruel. "You don't get it, do you, Emily? Jessica and I planned this all along. Your baby was never yours. It's always been part of our plan. Emily felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. Her knees went weak, and her mind reeled as the truth crashed down on her. John and Jessica had been in this together from the start. The dark magic, the ritual, it had all been for them. Why? You're my husband. How could you do this? Emily's voice broke with anger and despair. John's expression was cold, emotionless. You should feel lucky, Emily. Jessica offered me a way out. $5 million in exchange for your baby. She needed this pregnancy to secure her position, and I needed to escape my financial ruin. Emily's tears flowed freely, her heart torn apart. How could the man she trusted betray her so cruelly? How could he sell out their unborn child for money? You're insane. You and Jessica are both insane. Emily screamed, her voice raw with rage. How could you use such dark magic to hurt me and our child? John stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Emily, stop fighting. The baby is already gone. We can have another, but $5 million. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Emily's tears wouldn't stop. She felt hopeless, broken. Slowly backing away, she tried to distance herself from the nightmare unfolding before her. But just as she turned to run, the bed sheets in the bedroom began to rise, as if something invisible was crawling underneath them. Her breath caught in her throat, and her heart nearly stopped. A twisted, human-like figure formed under the sheets, its movements jerky and unnatural. It's here, Emily whispered, feeling the pull of the abyss. John froze, fear flickering in his eyes. This can't be happening. The creature under the sheets lunged forward, controlled by some malevolent force. John screamed, scrambling to escape, but an unseen power grabbed him, dragging him toward the bed. His fingers clawed at the floor, leaving deep scratches as he was pulled inch by inch into the darkness. Help me, Emily, please help me. John's voice was filled with terror, but Emily stood frozen, unable to move. She watched as her husband was swallowed by the shadows, the room's lights flickering violently. Fear gripped her heart, her mind torn between saving him and the betrayal he had just admitted. In that fleeting moment, Emily made her decision. She ran for the door, desperate to escape the nightmare. As Emily rushed out of the bedroom, she heard a loud crash behind her, followed by John's final scream. Then silence. She didn't look back. She raced through the apartment, flung open the front door, and ran out into the hallway, her legs barely able to support her. The cool night air hit her, but the fear still clung to her chest. The only person who could help her now was the old man. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed his number. John's been taken by it. What do I do now? Emily's voice was frantic, barely holding back her panic. The old man's voice on the other end was calm. You need to leave immediately. Gather anything important. The final ritual must begin soon. There's no time to lose. Emily nodded, her fear momentarily pushed aside by determination. Tonight was her last chance, her only hope of saving her child. She called a cab and headed straight for the location the old man had given her. The terror of this night had only just begun, and Emily knew the evil she was about to face was far beyond anything she had imagined. Emily's heart pounded relentlessly as the cab sped through the dark, quiet streets. Her hand clutched her phone tightly, her mind racing with the terrifying images of John's final moments and the unknown evil she would soon face. The weight of her unborn child's life pressed heavily on her soul. The thought of losing her baby, now so close to being saved, filled her with a desperate resolve. The cab pulled up to the abandoned church the old man had described. Emily stepped out onto the overgrown path. The church loomed before her, its crumbling walls and broken windows giving it a haunting, eerie presence. The cold night air chilled her to the bone, and a sense of dread settled in her chest. This was where it would all end. She hesitated at the entrance, fear gnawing at her, but she had no choice. Her child's life depended on this ritual. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The church was silent, filled with the stale air of a place forgotten by time. Moonlight filtered through the shattered stained glass windows, casting fractured beams of light onto the stone floor. Her footsteps echoed loudly as she approached the altar, where the old man was waiting. "You're here," the old man said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. He held a wooden ritual dagger in his hands, his face lit only by the flickering candles around him. The air in the room felt heavy, as if it was weighed down by an unseen force. Emily could feel the power in the atmosphere, a thick, malevolent energy that seemed to hum with anticipation. "I've prepared everything for the final ritual," the old man continued, his expression somber. On the floor, complex symbols were drawn, glowing faintly under the dim candlelight. A circle of candles surrounded the space where the ritual would take place. The air felt suffocating, as if the ancient magic had a mind of its own, and it was waiting for her next move. Emily's heart raced, but her resolve was unshakable. "John, he's gone. The curse took him. It's just me now. We need to save my baby, before it's too late." The old man nodded, his expression grave but determined. "This ritual is not just about saving your child. The force we are about to face is ancient and powerful. Whether you succeed will depend on your strength and willpower." Terror surged through Emily, but she knew there was no turning back. "I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'll do whatever it takes." The old man began chanting in a low, rhythmic voice, his words vibrating in the air around them. The ancient language he spoke seemed to stir something unseen in the room. Emily could feel it in her bones, the presence of something dark and terrible watching, waiting. The symbols on the floor began to glow, pulsing in time with the old man's chants, and the candles flickered wildly as the magic intensified. Suddenly, the church doors slammed open with a deafening bang. Emily's head whipped around to see Jessica standing in the doorway, her face contorted with fury. Darkness clung to her like a second skin, twisting and writhing in the faint light, as if it were alive. "You shouldn't have done this, Emily," Jessica hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. Her eyes blazed with hatred, fixed on Emily's belly as if it were the source of her rage. The air in the room grew colder, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. The darkness surrounding Jessica thickened, filling the space with a suffocating presence that made it hard to breathe. "Stay back," Emily shouted, instinctively stepping behind the old man. Jessica's lips curled into a wicked smile, her voice low and dripping with malice. "That child was always meant to be mine. You can't take what belongs to me." Emily's heart pounded in her chest as Jessica stalked toward her, her eyes filled with a terrifying madness. Emily could feel the malevolent energy radiating from her, an energy that seemed to ripple through the air, pressing down on her like an invisible weight. "You lost your child," Emily cried, backing away. "Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to hurt me?" Jessica's voice grew colder, more vicious. "You think I had a choice? Do you know what I gave up for this pregnancy? Everything. My career, my body, my life. Sacrificed for one chance at a family. And now you want to steal that from me? I won't let you." Her words dripped with venom, and the darkness around her seemed to twist and pulse in time with her fury. Emily felt the shadows closing in, suffocating her, making it harder to think, harder to breathe. She knew Jessica was beyond reason now, consumed by her obsession, by her rage. In a flash, Jessica lunged at Emily, her hands outstretched, eyes wild with murderous intent. But before she could reach her, the old man stepped forward, his wooden dagger glowing with a silvery light. He swung it through the air, and a burst of energy shot forth, striking Jessica and sending her stumbling backward. Jessica screamed in pain, clutching her abdomen as she staggered, her eyes filled with rage and desperation. "You think this will stop me? You think you can keep me from what's rightfully mine?" "Quickly," the old man urged, his voice sharp. "Finish the ritual now, before it's too late." Emily's hands shook, but she forced herself to move. She knelt at the center of the glowing symbols, pricking her finger with the ritual knife. Blood welled up from the small wound, and she let it drip onto the ground, her voice trembling as she recited the incantation the old man had taught her. The air around them crackled with power as the ritual took hold. The symbols on the floor glowed brighter, and the candle's flames flickered violently, as if struggling against the rising storm of dark magic. Emily could hear Jessica's voice in her ears, a low, venomous whisper. "You'll never escape me. That child is mine. It will always be mine." But Emily didn't stop. She repeated the incantation, louder, stronger. The warmth in her belly intensified, and she could feel the life inside her, pulsing with renewed strength. The connection between her and her child was growing, overpowering the darkness that had threatened to tear them apart. The candles flared with a blinding light, illuminating the entire church. Jessica screamed, her voice piercing the air as her body began to dissolve into shadow. With one final, soul-wrenching shriek, she vanished, leaving behind only a cold, empty silence. Emily collapsed onto the stone floor, her body trembling with exhaustion, but her heart filled with relief. It was over. The old man knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's done. Your child is safe now." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she felt the weight of everything that had happened finally crash down on her. She had faced the darkness, fought against overwhelming odds, and won. Her baby was safe. She had saved her child. Months passed, and Emily's life began to take on a semblance of normalcy, though the shadows of what had transpired still lingered in the quiet corners of her mind. The birth of her baby brought an indescribable sense of relief and joy, and with it, a fragile sense of peace. Her child was healthy, their tiny, delicate breaths a constant reminder that despite all the horrors she had endured, there was light at the end of the tunnel. Emily moved forward, determined to rebuild her life. She had lost so much: John, her trust in others, and, at times, even her own sense of self. But now she had something worth living for, worth fighting for: her child. Alone, she vowed to raise her baby with love, providing the safety and warmth that had been ripped from them during the darkest moments of her pregnancy. John's disappearance remained a painful mystery, something she couldn't fully explain to herself or others. The story she told the authorities was vague. He had simply vanished, leaving behind no trace. But deep down, she knew the truth. He had been consumed by the curse he had helped set in motion. His betrayal had been his undoing. As she cradled her newborn in her arms, gazing into their innocent, trusting eyes, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had survived the unimaginable, and now she had her child, her baby, who had almost been lost to the darkness. She had fought back against the forces that had sought to destroy her and come out stronger. But no matter how much she tried to move on, the nightmares never fully faded. On quiet nights, when the house was still and the wind howled outside her window, Emily would wake from dreams filled with Jessica's face, twisted with hatred, eyes burning with madness. In those dreams, Jessica's voice would taunt her, a cruel whisper in the dark: "You think you've won? That child was never yours." Every time Emily awoke, drenched in sweat and shaking, she would reach for her baby, gently placing her hand over their tiny chest, feeling the rhythmic rise and fall of their breathing. The steady heartbeat was her only anchor, the proof that the nightmare was over. She would hold her baby close, whispering to herself, "You are mine. You will always be mine." But even with the reassurance of her child's presence, there were moments when Emily could not shake the feeling that Jessica's curse had left a mark, an unseen stain that clung to her. In the dead of night, she would catch a glimpse of a shadow shifting out of the corner of her eye, or hear a faint, unfamiliar whisper in the wind. These fleeting moments filled her with an unsettling dread, a reminder that the darkness wasn't entirely gone. Despite the lingering unease, Emily refused to let fear control her life again. She had faced the worst, and she had come out the other side stronger. She knew that no matter what shadows lingered in her mind or what nightmares haunted her sleep, she would protect her child with everything she had. Jessica's curse, her rage, her obsession, it had been defeated. But as Emily stood by the window one quiet evening, watching the moonlight cast pale shadows across the room, a cold breeze slipped through the cracks, sending a shiver down her spine. She clutched her baby closer, her eyes scanning the darkness outside. The wind seemed to carry with it a faint whisper, something almost too soft to hear but unmistakable in its intent. "You'll never escape me." Emily closed the window, locking it firmly. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. Whatever darkness remained, whatever echo of Jessica's curse still lingered, she would not let it win. Her child was safe now, and as long as she could keep them safe, nothing else mattered. Thank you so much for joining us on this haunting journey through darkness, fear, and hope. We hope you were as captivated by Emily's fight for her child as we were in bringing this story to life. If you enjoyed the suspense, the chills, and the twists, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. We truly appreciate your support, and we hope this story brought a few thrills to your day. May you always find strength in the face of your own challenges, just as Emily did, and may the shadows stay where they belong, far away from your door. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep the lights on.